Good evening. Let's bring to order the August 23rd meeting of the Transportation and Circulation Committee. Let's see. First, let's have the roll call.
Committee member Warren? Speaker?
Oh, present.
France?
Present.
Greens?
Here.
Lackerby?
Here.
And Chair Rodriguez?
Here. I don't think there's any changes to the agenda that I'm aware of, last-minute changes to the agenda.
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have a request for public comment. Anna, did I get it? Anna? Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, please go ahead and give your full name so I don't pronounce it improperly.
It's pretty easy. It's Anna Marie Gott.
Okay.
And I'm actually here because I attended the scooter.
Her mic's not on.
Hi, my name is Anna Marie Gott, and I'm actually here because last week I attended the scooter workshop. And I know that you guys are going to be talking about bikes, so I went ahead and put some thoughts together about the scooters. You know, we talked about liability in our poor infrastructure and the liability that the city would face if someone was actually on the street and something happened. We talked about trip and falls, and we talked about enforcement, and we talked about cost recovery for the police officers because, you know, it's $175 an hour for officers if they're called out for some sort of issue. We also talked about rebalancing, which you guys will probably talk about today. But one of the things that we really did not talk about is what happens when the person who is riding a scooter causes someone else an injury. Who's responsible for that person's medical bills? Who's responsible to make sure that that person is made whole? You are not required to have any insurance when you get a scooter. We don't have any insurance, wraparound coverage, or general liability requirements with that scooter ordinance. Those people are left to fend for themselves. And did you know that right now in the state of California, in terms of Santa Barbara, we rank third in poverty? So one injury could be a substantial problem for any of our residents. 23% live in poverty. So what happens if they have a traumatic brain injury because they've been hit? What happens if they break a leg? What happens if they get a concussion? No one is asking these questions, and no one is talking about best practices for a city our size. We really haven't done our due diligence with the scooter ordinance, and now you've got something for bikes that you'll be looking at today. So I'm just trying to bring up some issues that I think are very, very big and things that have been overlooked. And they are very important to our residents and to tourists who might also be injured. Thank you.
I'm not speaking about that right this moment. I don't want you to think it's being ignored. We're just moving through the agenda.
I know exactly how public meetings work.
Good, thank you. All right, let's move on to the approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the May 31st minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, abstentions? No? Okay. Good. All right, now we can move on to the Waterfront Shuttle annual report.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Steve Moss from MTD is here to give that report, so we welcome Steve.
Good evening, Chair Rodriguez and members of the committee. So, as you stated, I am here to give a brief presentation on the fiscal year 18, which is the period from July 1st of 2017 through June 30th of 2018. on the downtown waterfront shuttles. So my first few slides are just a little bit about where the shuttle falls in relation to all the other routes that MTD runs. System-wide, we carried 6.3 million passengers, which is a very high number for a city of this size. Indicates that MTD, not only do we provide a high level of service, but that the residents here appreciate the service and ride it to a pretty good extent. So we're always happy to see that. Here's a listing of all of our routes by number of passengers carried. The greatest numbers of the ones at the bottom of the chart are trunk routes, no surprise, the 611, the 12 in the city of Santa Barbara, and a couple of UCSB routes. The downtown waterfront shuttle in red there is, and just makes it into the top third, which is good, especially for a service that operates with smaller vehicles than any of our other routes. And then a similar slide here shows riders per revenue hour. Now, what a revenue hour is in the transit business is any time a bus is out on the street for an hour carrying passengers, that is one revenue hour. So if you have, say, 4 buses out at one time, that's 4 hours, 4 revenue hours. That's the way that's measured. And as you can see, the shuttle is carrying about 21 passengers per hour, which is good. In our system, it falls just in the kind of the middle third of the routes, at the lower end of the middle third. So again, for a system of this type, we think that's not doing too bad. Then I'll move on to more specific information about the shuttle itself. There's a picture of our beautiful new buses, shuttles, at the Dolphin Planter. I'm sure, I don't know if some of you have ridden in those or not. If not, you should give them a try. And this just shows the route. The State Street shuttle runs from Sola Street down to the wharf, and it is a separate route from the waterfront routes, which run between the zoo and the harbor, which are shown in red. Some good news to talk about, something new. Next month, I believe, we're going to be introducing a one-day pass that's specific to the downtown waterfront shuttles. It will cost $1, and they're unlimited rides for a calendar day. So it'll function to some extent like a hop-on, hop-off shuttle that you see in a lot of cities, and we think that'll be attractive to people. I know MTD's marketing department is working with Visit SB, with Downtown Organization to help market it. Hotels have agreed, some hotels have agreed to buy them, and we're working with museums, Sea Landing, the Waterfront. As well, we'll do some giveaways to locals because we think this could work not only just for tourists but also for local residents. So we're excited about this new element in the service. Just real briefly go through the schedule. You may remember at the beginning of this last fiscal year on July 1st, working with the city, we eliminated the first hour of service on State Street, which used to start at 9 with just one shuttle, so it wasn't very frequent. So now, year-round, the service on both State Street and the waterfront begins at 10 and runs till 6. The exception to that is during the summer, we have some service till 9 o'clock on State Street and East Beach only, not West Beach. And then so that's basically just the rest of the year. It's just 10 to 6 simply. I should also mention the frequency in the summer is greater because we have more buses out in service at one time. So on State Street, we aim for every 10 minutes. On the waterfront, every 15 minutes in the summer. And then back to the rest of the year, it's 15 minutes on State Street and 30 minutes on the waterfront. Then a little bit about the actual performance of the service during the year. We carried just over 306,000 passengers. Now that is a decrease from the previous year, about a 12% decrease, so we're not thrilled about that. And we're continuing to look into ways to see first why that's happening and second to reverse that trend and increase ridership. We operated about 14,500 revenue hours, as I was describing earlier. The cost of the service to MTD is about $1.7 million. And the city pays about $1.1 million of that in fare buy-down subsidy, and then actual fare revenues, the quarters and 50 cents that people drop in the fare box, adds up to about a little over 100,000. Actually, it was 116,000 for the year. And this just kind of is to show by month the ridership versus the revenue hours. As you can see, there's a pretty close correlation between how many people ride in a given month and the amount of revenue hours of service that we provide. And that pattern has been pretty standard throughout my years at MTD, and I'm sure prior to that as well. It just tends to drop off a lot in the winter and is of course highest in the summer. So that's my presentation. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that any of you may have.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. I do have a quick clarifying question on, I'm not sure which slide it is, I think 2 back, on the FY 2018 performance.
Yes.
Just doing some quick math. So you said that the cost to MTD is 1.7 million. The city provides a 1.1 million subsidy, and you bring in 0.1 million in revenues.
Yes.
So if I do the math on that, does that mean that you're taking a $500,000 hit on providing this service?
Yeah, but it's public transit, and that's what we do, and we're certainly more than happy to contribute to the service. So yes, you're right.
Do you have grants or other outside funding sources to help make up some of that difference?
Well, we do. We get money. We get, of course, fare revenue. We get a pretty sizable chunk of fare revenue. We get federal money, state money, and we get some money from the local sales tax, the Measure A. So yeah, we do get subsidies from various sources.
So are you whole on this line, or are you operating at a loss?
Well, a little bit of Transit 101, I guess. Transit services generally never do make a profit. Mm-hmm. They just don't. And so to say operating at a loss, any bus service in the country practically is not making back its full cost through the fare revenue. Mm-hmm. And so there's always a subsidy involved to pay the remaining cost of the service. And you can say that for basically any transportation mode. Highways get a lot of tax money, airports, rail systems, they all get a lot of tax subsidy. Transportation is just not a business that generally pays for itself.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Susan?
I just wondered if you'd, I was looking at this picture of the new bus and just wondered if you'd give us a quick rundown on what some of the benefits are of that new bus.
Well, it's bigger, holds more people. Assuming we're able to turn the ridership around, that'll be a good thing. They're air conditioned, which a lot of people like. They're a much improved technology over our 2000-year shuttles that we are replacing, which were NiCad batteries, nickel cadmium batteries. These are, I don't even remember the name. They're a new technology. They can go faster. They can run more hours in a day before they need to be recharged. I'm sure there's other benefits that I'm forgetting at the moment.
Well, those are good. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Howard.
I'm impressed by the design of the new one-day pass.
Great.
I assume that revenue from selling those goes in just like the fare box revenue does.
Yes.
And for most of the fares, I believe you have a handicap or discount for seniors, half the fare. So do you have something in the future for the one-day pass?
Well, as we did for many years on the cash fare on the shuttle, because the fare is already bought down to a substantial degree, it's already less. The $1 is already less than our cash fare of a regular route, which would be $1.75. And so we're not at this moment, at least at this time, planning to do a reduced fare on the pass. It could be something we'd consider in the future.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ed.
Well, thank you, Chair Rodriguez. Steve, thank you. This is great. I really appreciate you doing a more detailed presentation to kind of mix up, because we get regular briefings from you all. And I really also appreciate MTD doing a presentation to downtown parking, which I think was very valuable, especially to introduce the concept of the day pass. Quick question, not to get technical, but for UCSB and City College students, are they sliding cards or are they showing and drivers hitting a button?
Well, currently they're not they have to pay a fare to ride. This route is distinct from our other routes.
Totally. So I'll bring it back. But I guess my question is just from a technical standpoint, are they flashing cards or are they sliding their cards?
On the other, well, on
Like for Santa Barbara City College
again
students
on
or for...
on the downtown Waterfront shuttle though.
No, outside of that.
Oh,
Like
okay.
say the
I'm sorry, I
24X
wasn't
or the
understanding.
16X.
Well,
can answer
the
that.
introduction of smart cards is underway, and probably Hillary could answer that a lot better than I can, actually.
It's in the final testing in the next month, basically. So there are some being tapped, actual proximity cards, like a chip card. And that's what it's going to be moving towards instead of showing the sticker, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So that's the plan and the technology that's moving towards, but it's not accepted on the shuttle service. Yeah.
Yeah, but currently for those services, they're showing the sticker.
There's a little bit of both. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So kind of the reason I asked that, and I really like the day pass. I really think that reflects MTD really trying to be innovative and come up with, creative ways of looking at growing ridership for this really important, it's a baseline important route. So I'm going to kind of match that. I think this is a great prototype. I think that its play may be limited, and it's very important circles that it can get distributed through, but they're limited. It's just not going to be a mass market kind of thing. However, I do think that similar to the presentation at downtown parking, I think it'd actually be great to have a presentation at the Waterfront because they also support the portion of these routes. And really continuing that creative, innovative thinking for ways to integrate fully the Waterfront and downtown shuttles through the system. So there's downtown parking and there's waterfront parking. Waterfront parking is the whole waterfront, right? And that's the same stretch. So I would love to see that, and I think there might even be creative ideas that can't be implemented immediately, but I'll give one example. At the waterfront, I'm at the harbor frequently, and it's actually really hard to see the waterfront shuttle because it's outside, because it's on shoreline, and that's really outside of the view when you're visiting the waterfront. So if you're visiting, Brophy Brothers and the harbor, you don't see it at all. And the station is not ideal in terms of where you're going to sit. However, maybe they could do something in the future like UCSB where the buses could actually go through the parking lot and exit the exit by Los Baños pool. Random idea, it would cost some money, but that's the kind of thing that maybe you all could get from the waterfront or from the Harbor Commission that could help boost service on that route. Which, I mean, in my world, I would love if people are regularly going in between State Street and the harbor because it's so close. So anyway, I really appreciate the tack that you all are taking on this, and I really would just like to ask that you continue it.
Well, we will, and thank you. And any ideas that you have are great. We're always happy to hear suggestions from members of this committee or any members of the public. And we do everything that comes in. We look at it and consider it, see if it's feasible, and take it seriously.
I just want to add, the excuse me, the one-day pass seems terrific, and I really like that idea a lot. And kind of chime in that in my utilization, I'm a grandmother with kids with strollers, and they love Moxie. And the parking there, it took me a while to even figure out where to park for Moxie. Because when you drive up, you're not even sure where to find anything, and you kind of go around behind the Fish Enterprise and park. But the idea of this pass, I think we could, I could park up the street somewhere and take the shuttle down, and I wouldn't feel so locked in to having to park and unpack the stroller and go through all that drama so close by. So I think there's a lot that might open up, especially for Moxie Museum people. Just mentioning that. So thank you.
Another question. The schedule book has stop numbers that are used with the application for sending a message and getting bus times. Are the new equipment all supporting that in terms of equipment tracking?
They will be. We're in the process of integrating this. The new buses have the software, but we're in the process of getting it integrated into our system so that at some point you will be able to use the app just on those routes, just like on any other route. That's a ways away, a few months.
Several months. Thank you.
Chair Rodriguez, sorry, I lost one of my points, if you can believe that. But so just to loop back, I asked about the sort of the sticker, and the reason being, as mentioning the parking, the waterfront or downtown, I really feel strongly that the ability to use your parking pass for our system where we encourage people to park once and then enjoy Santa Barbara locations throughout the day should be integrated with both those shuttles. And the ability to show, like, I bought in the system, we're paying for the fare buy down, so I'd love if that could be integrated, and we are literally buying individual fare buy downs with either waterfront or downtown parking tickets.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Technology compatible?
Oh, I think,
Is the technology compatible in that the tickets that are issued by the parking machines striped or?
No, I haven't been involved in our smart card, our new farebox program, but it looks like maybe Mr. Dayton is.
Yeah, we've been working to do that. We want to do just that, and there's good news and there's bad news. So the tickets we use from Skidata are right now aren't compatible. So we're trying to figure out a solution to that. Some of the other challenges too is most people leave their tickets in their car so that they don't actually lose them. And when you do lose your ticket, it's not, we have to charge people a little bit more perhaps than they were even parking. But that is a goal, and the downtown parking committee has asked for that, and we want to make that happen. We pay for the city pays for the shuttle, so we can ask for a free ride for everyone who's parking in the parking district. That's not an issue. It's just how to do it. We've even said maybe we just need to have them show their parking ticket. Just show the driver. So those discussions are ongoing, and we're hopefully going to land on some solution soon.
well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
That's up to the chair.
Could you ask him after the formal meeting, please? Thank you very much. Okay, now we need thank you very much. Now we'd like to move to the car share update.
Vision 0? Is that first?
Yeah.
I think the
Oh,
next
I'm sorry, I made a mistake. We're moving to Vision 0 right now. Yeah, I had,
At the wish of the chair.
exactly.
Whatever.
Don't
Whichever
ask
one
me
you
why.
want.
I got thrown off.
Okay, so
Okay, the Vision 0 presentation, and then we have some requests for speakers. So I'd like to have the presentation and then brief clarifying questions from the committee, and then public comment, and then we can have a thorough discussion.
Okay, Madam Chair, committee members, we're just bringing up the presentation. Yeah, maybe bring that over. Much easier. I won't touch the mouse. It always does not work for me. So good evening and thank you. It's exciting that we're actually here talking about Vision 0. I know we've talked about this in the past with the committee. As a matter of fact, the City Council implemented a policy in 2016, late 2016, and did a policy, and we actually came to the Transportation Circulation Committee with a draft for a plan. So it's been some time, and as you will recall, on that night, February 2022, was the first night that our mobility coordinator gave a presentation, and that was her last day. So we have been challenged with staff since then, and perhaps it's good that we've had a little bit of pause. One thing to note is that because we don't have a plan approved by council yet does not mean we are not implementing the policy. And one thing you're going to hear in this presentation, I hope a lot, and you've seen in the document, is that things are changing. Even Derek Bailey's in the back. He's the traffic engineer. Thank you for coming. Dan Taglis was supposed to be here. He might walk in later. But as we have conversations about projects, what Derek and I realize in a very profound way is that this policy is shifting the way we think. And so that's why I was saying perhaps it's good that we've had the pause, because I think we have had enough time to marinate on what is an effective plan. And what we've come up with is that we should do a strategy and not a plan, but I'll get to that. So just for those who are watching at home and don't know what Vision Zero is, what is it? It's a statement that traffic-related deaths and serious injuries are avoidable and unacceptable, and that there needs to be a shift in transportation goals and mentality. It comes out of Sweden originally and has kind of swept across Europe, and there are a number of cities across America who have had Vision Zero plans in place for a certain amount of time. One of the ones that gives me the most hope is that New York just announced that they've got over 44% reduction in pedestrian deaths and injuries in just since 2014. That is a pretty dramatic change with rethinking how we do transportation. So our Vision Zero policy that the council has adopted is that we will eliminate all severe and fatal transportation-related collisions by 2030. And again, that seems aggressive, but when you see the results coming from some of our other cities that have issues, I think that it gives us hope that we can make huge strides. And then we're going to prioritize transportation safety. That is going to be, above all, the most important thing. One of the interesting things about this discussion is who gets hurt. Who's the most likely to get hurt in Santa Barbara in the system? This is how Santa Barbarans commute. Always the most by car. That actually includes carpoolers too. So single occupant vehicle is down about 68%. That's actually pretty good for a city in America. The average is more around 80. Walking and biking is pretty high at 13%, and you can see the rest. But the challenge is that when you're in a collision, although vehicles do have a lot of collisions, and you see about the right proportion of pedestrians and bicycles involved in collisions, when you look on the right, the story kind of unfolds a little bit more clarity, is that although pedestrians and bicycles represent 13% of road users, they account for 62% of serious injuries or fatalities, and that's over a 10-year period. One of the things you're going to note from the change from last time is we were looking at 15 years of data, and we're changing that to 10 because we have a new reporting mechanism, and so we want to be apples to apples. We have the last 10 years, and we've got the most recent data. So this has been all updated since you last saw it. Well, the last time you saw it, the last year was 2015. Now we got 2017, so that's really good.
Yeah.
But the clarity of who gets hurt, the most likely person is going to be a pedestrian or a bicyclist, and that's not okay. One of the things that I am really excited about the changes, out of the things that you asked us to look at, the core principles is something that's new to the document, and I'm going to walk you through them, but here's what I want you to think about when you think about core principles and why they might be helpful, is because when we bring projects forward, we have to have in short order, not a whole document, 20-page document, but in short order, some value statements that we as transportation professionals and as a police department and elected officials that we will live by. And so that's what this represents, something that we can actually put in a council agenda report or reference in a presentation. And so it's our core principles. The other thing we've added is safety first mentality. We've really strengthened that area. I think what our traffic engineer and myself, Derek Bailey, and the staff, as we have these discussions, we really feel that it's the safety mentality and the shift in that is really going to make the difference in the end. And then also something we've already talked about, the targeted corridors, and we're going to go over that again, but that is not new. So the seven core principles: life is most important. Whether you are dying in Santa Barbara because it's a murder or because you get hit by a car, it's still a death, and that's really important. Every person matters. It doesn't matter race, color, creed, wherever you're from, socioeconomic status. Every person matters. People make mistakes, This is at the core thrust of Vision Zero, is that people are going to make mistakes. We're no longer saying that that's okay. We're saying we're going to try to design the roadway in a way and educate in a way so that when someone does make a mistake, it's not a fatal or a severe injury. Number 4, we're going to focus on dangerous locations and behaviors. That's where we're statistically driven, where we can focus our limited resources. We only have a limited amount of resources at the city of Santa Barbara. We're going to focus those on the most dangerous locations and behaviors. And then number 5, drivers have a critical responsibility. And if you read the language under that, I think it is pretty strong, but I think it's important. Number 6, pedestrians and cyclists are the most vulnerable road users. Because they are, it's not that we're saying, hey, you take the full load, but because they are the most vulnerable, we have to educate them about that fact that they need to be visible. They need to behave in a way that's going to be predictable and to protect themselves. And then number 7, which is also a major thrust of Vision Zero, is that the government shares responsibility for safe streets. So it's before, when you'd read these principles, it'd probably be just one. Road users are responsible for safety. and now what we're doing is we're saying, hey, no, at every level, we're going to take responsibility, and that's how we get to zero. The safety first mentality, I think, is best described in another transportation industry that actually has had Vision Zero from the beginning, and that is the airline industry. If a plane goes down, everybody reads about it. There's multiple deaths involved. It's usually death, and it's usually can be in the hundreds. Everyone reads about it. Everyone knows about it. It actually gets kind of globally transmitted. In fact, if the airline had planes going down all the time, they would not have an industry. So we could say that that's probably a little bit economically driven. But as a result, they have all these things in place, like how many people have been on the tarmac and they're turning the plane around, and it doesn't even sound like a small thing, but we're still going back to the plank because the plane, something's not right. We're not doing it. Everything. We rushed out to, someone installed a light pole barely in the approach runway for Santa Barbara earlier this year, and we were out unbolting it like it was like an alarm, because they have Vision Zero thinking. But when you think about when someone gets in a collision, it's 30,000 Americans a year, but you don't hear about it. And when you do hear about it, I was just listening to the radio on the way here, motorcycle down, now we're backed up. It's not about the injuries or the fact that this motorcyclist may have died. We're actually talking about the congestion and the inconvenience that's going to result. So the focus isn't even on safety. And then the other thing that culturally is happening is that we call everyone, and even in our industry for many years, we call them accidents. But there actually is no such thing as an accident with automobiles, and there's always a cause that we find, and we find it's preventable. So it's that safety first mentality. We've done, I think, a robust job of talking about how it's going to shift. And it's going to shift in mainly these areas with speeding, because the faster you're going, the more likely that someone's going to get hurt or have a fatality. Substance abuse is a very big part of our collision record. DUIs, very heavy on that. Distracted driving, which is kind of new in the last 5 years, but is quickly becoming something that's showing up in the statistics, mainly because we have single drivers mid-block getting in a collision. What was that about? Distracted driving, non-use of safety devices, and inadequate enforcement. And so there's going to be more. We're going to be apply our new thinking, our safety first mentality in these areas. And one of the things that I'm really excited about that we've, and I'm sorry, Officer Tagless is not here to talk about it with us, is that the police department is actually going to start giving their statistics, their crime statistics, alongside vehicle collision fatalities and severe injuries, so So when they're looking at the police resources, we're talking about, okay, so death on either side of those equations is not okay. And if people are getting hurt, it's not okay. And so how are we going to allocate our police resources? Very excited about that step that they've said they want to take as a part of their community policing approach. Yeah.
Just a quick clarification. How did they do it before? They would talk about traffic when they'd like give their annual report to the city council?
That's correct. It's a crime stat driven process, and crime stats are brought forward. So this would be a shift, and it doesn't mean the police department's fully responsible for this. So we you see in the strategy we're all responsible, but by reporting them side by side, it elevates or perhaps creates some equity about who's getting hurt. And it's not okay that anyone gets hurt. Yeah. So you've heard about the 4 E's. I won't spend a lot of time, but that's a significant portion of the strategy, and largely we've just made it a little bit more robust. And then the priority corridor approach, and we hit this one home. I think you felt it last time we talked about this. Is that we get complaints every day. We get complaints from the public about something that feels unsafe. It's perceived unsafe. We get complaints. PD gets complaints. They want, there's a dead end street and so there's someone speeding. There's no collisions, and they're going out and doing radar enforcement on a dead end street. This is just the reality. We're very, we want to take care of Santa Barbara, and we want to be responsive to Santa Barbara. So we're good with handling complaints. The challenge is that we have a limited amount of resources, and so focusing our energy and our time on priority corridors, and then also communicating to the public why that's important to them for their safety is something we're going to need to learn and are learning to do, and we're going to focus on that. Identifying patterns that indicate opportunities for improvement. What are the patterns that we're seeing based on the collisions that would lead to design alternatives and a coordinated approach with PD and enforcement? We have a new heat map. It's a little different than the one you saw before. Derek is very proud of this map, so please respect this map. It just really is, it just does a good job of showing where the hot spots are, and where those hot spots are where collisions are most likely to repeat. That's where you're gonna get the repeats. We did get some comments about because we're showing a heat map this way rather than we had the dots before with little bit bigger dot for repeats, that this is harder to see the streets. So I'm not sure how we rectify that. We know where the streets are, but perhaps we can work on the map and making sure that you understand where you're looking. And then our priority corridors, they've gone up. We've got more. We just wanted to show the whole string of the corridors and how they relate in terms of safety right now. When we do, you may not know this, but bike lanes in Santa Barbara, we had huge growth in bike lanes in my tenure because of one simple thing. Whenever we repaved the street, we said, can we fit a bike lane? If we could, we put it in. Just no loss of lanes, just put in a bike lane. And we doubled the lane miles of bikes that way. And so one of the things you need to know is that with the passage of Measure C, now we have road maintenance. We're going to start accelerating our program and really taking care of our streets. That means an opportunity to restripe. So as we're looking at these corridors, it doesn't mean that we're going to say, hey, let's focus all of our attention on Upper State Street or Lower State Street right now until we solve that problem. It means that when we have these really good opportunities to change and really focus on a corridor with striping, with little new designs, with enforcement, that we're going to take the opportunity when we're on the street. So we are going to focus from top to bottom, but we're also going to take the opportunity when we're on the street. The priority corridor actions, we just have a little bit, kind of a change of verbiage. And I want to, we even hint in the document, I think it says, that these are preliminary. You know, this is not an exhaustive, we haven't done all the examining to, with the microscope level, but this is this is a high-level first go with what the actions might be. But I just don't, it's going to be richer as we go through location by location. So I hope you're encouraged at the responsiveness to your comments. This goes to City Council, coincidentally, on 9/11. So we're hoping that if you would like to participate that, I think it's a good opportunity. I think it's a really milestone event. I think the policy was for sure, but I think the strategy, we're just a little bit, I think when we passed the policy, we kind of understood what we were getting into. And I think now we, commonly in my career, we're like, hey, the heroes, those are the guys with the badges and the fire department. What this says is, hey, the transportation people can save lives now. So it is a milestone moment for the industry in general. And so I hope you can attend and support it at City Council, and we'll take your questions.
Duly noted that we should be there. Do we have any quick clarifying questions before we take some public comment? Anybody? Okay, let's do some public comment. Let's see, Jim Marston.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I'm Jim Marston. I'm chairman of the Access Advisory Committee and serve on a Sidewalk Safety Committee and the Valley Parking Ordinance Committee. And I'm an old-time researcher on mobility and access for disabled people. So everybody has to love the Vision Zero concept, but as Rob pointed out, the majority, the highest percentage of problems are pedestrians and bikes. So I wonder why we're trying to now bring in 15-mile-an-hour scooters that can be left any place. People can trip, fall. The scooters can have accidents in the streets, and they're not going to enforce the helmet law. And now we want to bring bicycles in. These are the two most prevalent places for deaths. So I don't see how this can help your plan at all unless the scooters and bikes are very, very much enforced. And living downtown, I can see that police don't even enforce the skateboard and sidewalks now. And I don't see how they're going to be able to enforce the scooters. But those things are 15 miles an hour. And one of my traffic engineering buddies from the old days told me the biggest problem of safety is the difference in speed between vehicles. You can go 80 miles an hour if everybody else is. But if you're going 5 miles an hour and someone's going 20, that's a more dangerous situation. So I think it's ridiculous to even think about a 15-mile-an-hour scooter or a 15 to 20-mile bicycle in places where people aren't going that fast. But that's all I'll say. I love the plan, but I don't see how it's going to help you at all to have more pedestrian, scooter, bicycles on the planet here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Frank Peters.
Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Frank Peters. I'm a member of the Citizen Advisory Committee for Measure C. I'm a member of the Board of Directors for SB Bike. I'm so excited to see this Vision Zero plan here, and I'd just like to say thank you to staff and Mr. Dayton. Your remarks so encouraging, really, very heartfelt. As I'm reading this, you can even see from there. Here's the agenda that you published. I've scribbled all over it. I could talk for an hour. I know that's not appropriate. But I thought people make mistakes. I put a circle around that. Just to acknowledge that, because on SB Bike, from time to time, Ed and I share a ride in a car, and half the time he's the passenger. So he could tell you of the times that I have missed an exit on the freeway more than once, but only one stop sign that I rolled right through. So it's age. He's kind. He's quick to say that that happens to everybody. My age is what I hear. So I'm very aware of that, and that has caused me to bring a new sensitivity to how I ride my bike and certainly how I drive a car. could I draw your attention to my little photo that
Apologize.
everybody's got one of these at their desk?
They're supposed to. They do now.
They do now, yeah. Thank you.
I apologize.
So for me, as I have paid attention to Vision Zero since it was first invented, it's a mindset. It's a new way of looking at things. And I thought I would just share this with you. You see these up and down State Street, right? No left turn during different hours. Now, the other day I had breakfast down at the marina, so I'm out early prior to 10 a.m. Seldom do I make trips on my bicycle that early in the morning. So on State Street, and I'm heading down there, and I see cars opposing me sitting at the light with their left turn blinker on. And I'm aware of that, and I'm seeing that. But the acknowledgement or the recognition I feel is, wow, it's different right now. It's before 10 a.m., right? Same thing on Sundays. I have to be aware and picture it. I make mistakes, and so do the motorists. So this, I think, you could say this particular picture here is, this sign is exclusively for the benefit of the motoring public. Soon I'm going to have a new electric bike. I know the color, it's going to be black. And as I am rolling down State Street early in the morning or on a Sunday, I know that the motorist who is perhaps watching me closely and preparing to make his left turn, he might have trouble recognizing that this is a bicyclist, but he's moving faster because he's on an electric bike. That all adds up to potential for, an unhappy outcome. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay. Daniel Fishbein?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Rob, it's nice to see you all focusing on severe injuries and deaths rather than skin knees. I think that's very, very important. That's an important shift for everybody, that we can't take care of every skin knee. Nonetheless, when I commented on the bicycle master plan 6 months before public comment started, I was told it was too late by your staff, who's no longer here. Well, we won't mention his name. I hope it's not too late for public comment here, because I do have a number of them. I'm going to race through them, and if you want to talk later, I'm in email conversation with young Sam here. This is, you quoted World Health Organization. This is a public health approach. Virtually every Vision Zero plan in a large city has a public health component. That's what I do. I'm not asking for myself to be involved, but you're going to need a public health component if you're going to get anywhere. Why? For instance, I have noticed that 25% of the serious bicycle injuries are not included in your SWITR statistics. They're not there. I can tell you why, but not now. It's going to take some time. 25% of the deaths that occur in Santa Barbara County due to bicycles are not in SWITRs. This is not city now. I'm moving up to county level. How does public health approach these things? Nice analogy to the airplanes. What public health does is it looks at every death as an individual case and tries to figure out why it happened. That's how we do with maternal deaths. Maternal deaths are totally unaccepted, deaths during pregnancy. We do an analysis of each one. I would urge you to look at some of those deaths. I don't know if you know the last one that occurred in Santa Barbara. It was a real interesting one. You know where it was? What street? It was Gutierrez. I'll argue it with you later. You got to look at every one of these deaths, and that's my main point. The only other quick thing I'll say is I see you still have your 10-year rolling average. Statistically, your 10-year rolling average is your outcome measure. You're going to see a change in 10-year rolling average. That was in the document, I think. Am I right? Statistically, absolutely impossible that you're going to see anything in another decade. and I can prove that to you also, a change. You're going to have to find another way of looking at outcomes. So I'm always happy to work through Ed and through SB Bike, although I'm not speaking for them, but I'm happy to give you some detailed comments. I hope this can get in before you go to council, because otherwise I'm going to say the same thing.
Thank you very much. Let's see, who hasn't talked? Have I? Yes, Eva Inbar.
Good evening. I'm Eva Inbar. I'm on the board of Coast. And we have campaigned together with SB Bike for 5 years. And this is a great feeling for us to see this come to fruition here. The plan that we're seeing tonight, I think, is much improved over the one that we saw in February. The language is very good. The idea is well laid out, I think, and the principles, this is all good. And so I commend Public Works for that. Also, what I was missing, and some others were missing last time, what I called the beef, some of the concrete action steps that we are going to take, that is now in there. Some of the things that we are going to do on those high injury corridors, that is so important. And that is one thing that, in fact, they did in New York, and that made their program so successful. They had a number of things they were going to do from the very beginning, such as neighborhood slow zones, and they had to go to the state of New York to get the law changed there. So they put a great deal of effort into those things that I called the beef, and that now is in the plan too. It's a work in progress, of course, as it should be. So this is all good. So I'm pleased with the plan, and I want to thank Public Works for all the sustained effort that they put into this. So this is it. It really shows. So I hope it'll be transformative. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Anna Marie.
Anna Marie Gott, and I have to say I agree with a lot of the comments so far, and I love the fact that the gentleman was bringing data. I love having accurate data that's actually included, information that you can actually base decisions on. I don't think we actually made good decisions when the scooter ordinance was passed, and I don't like the idea that this bike ordinance that you're going to be talking about today is going to be based on, or at least you're looking at, the same scooter ordinance. I wanted to read you something. It might take a little bit longer, but it basically, let me just stop. You guys are trying to prevent accidents. You're trying to reduce injuries, right? Can we look at, I think it was slide number 15? That's where we also want to put the scooters. That's where we think most people are going to be riding the bicycles in the last mile. And I think people really need to look at that map, because that is where cars have the most accidents. Is that where we're going to have the most accidents with bicycles and pedestrians? The gentleman showed you the no left-hand turn signal. Are tourists really going to not make a left as they're going up on a scooter up State Street? Probably not. So getting back to the article, as bike share programs get new riders on the road and into better shape, some doctors say that they're treating more injuries, including traumatic ones related to cycling, and that cities need to do more to actually protect not only cyclists but the pedestrians. In a paper last year at the Governor's Highway Safety Association, they said that there was an increase in deaths of 12.2% in 2015, and that was based on data from the National Highway Traffic Safety. And bicycle fatalities rose by 1.3%. Hospital admissions due to bike traumas rose 120%. which means that injuries are more severe. This is from Berkeley and San Francisco. In Mount Sinai, they have trauma centers that deal with bike fatalities and bike injuries. What they looked at was a 34% increase in accidents. They
Over
said
what period
that
of time?
the main reason the doctors who are looking into this say that they are having so many more bike fatalities and injuries is because people aren't wearing helmets. And they say that oftentimes tourists who want to go joyriding and explore the city actually are the ones that are harmed more often.
Thank you very much. Okay. Shall we have a discussion? Go ahead, Howard.
I'd like to focus on the next slide. I think after that, the priority corridors. Both that slide and then the detail that's in the more textual report. I need to understand the relative length because the statistics here look weird. In other words, it may be that Bath Street only has, what is it, 10, 5? I can't see the line. And yet it may have no traffic. So proportionally, it needs help more. In other words, the length of the street is a factor, the length of the corridor. And I don't know between now and the city council whether that's worthy of considering. But the prioritization right now is based on this chart, I think. And I think it's not calculating for length, not calculating for traffic. Thank you.
Hillary?
First, I want to say I'm so excited about this. I was reading the strategy and the report. I wanted to cheer because it's been a long time coming. And I want to thank Coast and and SB Bike and all the individuals in the public who fought for this when no one knew what Vision Zero meant. And I feel like, especially Eva has been, banging that drum for so many years, and it's paying off. And I mean, it'll ultimately pay off by 2030, but it's paying off now. And I've noticed just in interaction with city staff since the policy that you are more self-assured and understand that the focus is this. The focus is safety first. And that is very clear. And as wonderful as all the work has been, we can all be honest and say that has not been the guiding, the North Star for most departments in most jurisdictions, but it hasn't been for us. And I'm so excited about it, and I think it will be transformative, and I think already has been in some ways about how we think of things. To that end, and I know this is something I harp on all the time, I'm interested to see how this plays out in some of our design review boards. I will never forget the pedestrian refuge island that was taken out of a project after being approved for aesthetic reasons from the Historic Landmarks Commission. That's a bee in my bonnet that will remain, frankly, until that pedestrian refuge island is put on Cabrillo Boulevard. But that is something that is absolutely unacceptable. And it's not stated explicitly in here, but I still understand this to be that aesthetics will never outweigh good engineering and safety. And that hasn't been the case, and I'm so appreciative that will be the case. It makes me proud to live in this city for that reason. And what you're doing about the complaint system, And I understand my whole public service career has been dealing with a lot of complaints from the public about things that either perceived problems, real problems, all that. I know it's very hard, and we want to please everyone, and we want to give everyone the thing that they want so that they feel better. But we got to follow the statistics. And I know that it's going to be tricky. You're going to stumble, but it's so, so important. And I think I'd be interested to hear about other cities like New York, right? So that deaths were down 44%. Was that deaths and serious or just deaths? So I'd be interested, all the other thing, all the skinned knees. I think we will have fewer skinned knees, right, if we do this, right? So the not so serious, but still, on a given day, if you're knocked off your bike and you didn't die or go to the hospital in an ambulance, it's still not great. And that's going to solve a lot of those problems too. So I hope we're tracking that alongside for those that are reported anyway. And I know that they are not always. So on that design review question, I'd be interested to see if we could have some type of orientation for boards that deal with that kind of thing off the bat, not on an ad hoc basis for projects, just to give them there's a new sheriff in town and safety is our number one priority. And all of this, I think it's important, frankly, for all of our boards and commissions, but especially for them because they have made those determinations in the past. The heat map, I do like your map, Derek. It's very good. Could we go to that slide? So the 10-year, and I know that there's, statistical issues, and everyone could debate data till we're blue in the face and research methods. But the thing I'm thinking as I look at the red dot, the furthest to the coast, sort of the bottom, is that
That's Miggs and Cliff.
right? Okay. So what would be interesting, and there's a little bit of yellow heat at Las Positas and Cliff, thinking about as we go through time, we're looking at this 10-year, but as we've put in projects, checking back at those certain hotspots, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a roundabout there right now. CODA, we have a protected lane. Being able to toggle between as we go, and maybe if there's a website, like goes through here, if there's a slider where we can show, look, it made a difference, and we don't have to just average over 10 years, and that's the only thing we look at. And I think we're going to see some good things out of that. The last thing is enforcement, and I'm signed up for all these alerts from the city, through Nick's alert, through Aware and Prepare, whatever, city, county, and I get so many, and I know the grant fund and everything. I get so many emails about bike and ped enforcement this Thursday in Goleta or in the city of Santa Barbara, right? And they don't say where it's going to be, so it's sort of put you on edge. Mind your P's and Q's if you're biking or walking. And occasionally there will be crosswalk kind of stings for motorists failing to yield to pedestrians. But I see a lot more, maybe it's just perception, but I see a lot more hey, we're going to come get you, bike and ped. And I agree that needs to continue, but I would like to see more publicity about, hey, motorists that are driving this deadly weapon, we're going to come get you. And I know it's education, but that's something that I think there's not as much of a sort of public relations message that's pointed in our community anyway, that if you're not stopping for pedestrians, we're going to come after you, you're speeding, whatever. I don't see that as someone who uses all modes. I'm much more worried that, an officer's watching what I'm doing when I'm on my bike than when I'm in a car, which is sort of backwards. So I really appreciate this. I'm so excited. I'm definitely going to try to come to the council meeting to support this because this is a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work. And I'm really excited that we're at this point. And I like that it's a strategy, not a plan, because you can re-strategize, you can keep it going and keep it alive, and not just put it on a shelf. And I trust and believe that you will do that. So thank you.
Susan?
Well, fantastic job. It's been a long process, and it's really working well. And I'm so glad that you've moved in this direction. I would like to ask again about education funding, because that is, like Hillary said, that's kind of an area that is missing.
Yeah.
So what is happening there?
So I thank you for that question. I think we mentioned it last time we were here in February, but we were going to ask for $50,000, and council put that into our budget.
You did?
Yeah, so we have that funding. So now it's just a matter of finding, being very strategic with that money. The things that I think about are the recycle campaign, and the guilt I feel, if I can't find the blue can, So I think that's the kind of thing we need to do, and we need to hire people who know how to do that. I don't think there's really anyone on board in our team who knows how to do that. So we have to figure out how to really get Santa Barbara's attention when there's so many different messages going on, and cause some disruption about what we're talking about.
Okay, thanks.
I have a couple of questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to? Okay. Well, I don't have to go last. It's hard to phrase this. As some of you may know, I have a master's degree in public health, and I have been in this community as a health professional for a number of years. And my first involvement really was in developing the general plan that we currently operate with, putting health care objectives into the general plan for the city of Santa Barbara for the first time. And I worked with Rob on that project. So we're still on that plan. And one of the things we wanted was to improve traffic, reduce fatalities. It was a general statement. We wanted to reduce asthma. We want to reduce obesity by having better walkability. These are goals that are happening all over the country. And at that time, it was brand new. And it reminds me of Vision Zero. This is another step of further modification or improvement from that general idea of let's figure out how the city can make life better for people in a whole lot of ways. So that being said, we have had discussions here about the issue of people who are riding a bike and fall and break a pelvis, and it never gets documented by the police or the fire department because they get up and take themselves to the hospital or they call an ambulance. So this is fabulous. That has to be said. And the work that is going on here is incredibly important. As a public health advocate, I think the next step really needs to be that the hospital system in this community coordinates and reports. You're talking about the step we're making of coordinating the traffic complaints with the police department complaints about my street is a nightmare. They call Derek and drive him crazy. They call the police and drive them crazy. My street's a nightmare. And those streets end up getting on the list. And then the actual collisions for pedestrians and bicycles, that's really the bad stuff. That's the worst stuff. And that's what we're seeing. And it's the most important to address. But wouldn't it be terrific if we knew all the people who hurt themselves on their bikes but never told anybody in the law enforcement community? I think that we could move into that direction. So I'm not saying we have to do it this minute, but I just think that that's part of the reason I'm on this committee is to, and Rob, we've talked about that in many other conversations, that the fusion of a true public health documentation along with the jurisprudence documentation is really a good thing. So I wanted to say that. And I would speak to Anna Marie's point. I think that this chart does talk about bicycle accidents. And I guess I do, since it came up a couple of times, can we talk a little bit about scooters?
I think you're on point with Vision Zero as long as you talk about transportation safety.
So what if our scooters possibly, we're modifying this, if scooters are going to become more popular and electric bikes, can we see, in the future, could we have that will that evolve as part of this report? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think that the scooters and to some extent shared mobility adds a lot of challenges and complexity to transportation issues. There's two ways of looking at that. On the one hand, you can look at it like, well, if you really wanted to be disruptive to the conversation, someone could stand up and say, well, as reported, 62% of all the deaths and fatals are bicycle and pedestrian related. So the answer is there's no more biking or walking in Santa Barbara. And to some extent, if you say, well, there's some creative mobility coming out and there may be some injuries involved in it, it's a similar, well, then don't use that transportation form. And, to some extent that may be appropriate. But we do have to consider that, people are going to get around in new ways. We're going to have cars driving around without drivers, and it's just going to be really, really an interesting future for us all. And so, in regards specifically to the scooters, I don't think that we did move forward with an emergency ordinance, but that was primarily to not let rogue scooter share come to town, and that there were very strong safety issues and concerns. A couple of them were mentioned in the public commenting, tripping on them as they're just left to strewn, and then there's no helmet provided directly which is required by law. So there's all sorts of things. The council even has something in there about regulating speed, because the top speed I think was 15, and I think that we've heard from other communities that's too high. I don't think the conversation is over by any means, and we haven't looked at the vendor. We're moving very slow, and it may maybe not pan out if the bar is pretty high for safety for the operator. And if they can't meet those terms that are in the ordinance, then maybe we won't get there. But if they can, and we do have them on our street, and they do provide a lot of mobility, then we're going to have to deal with that too, because transportation is supposed to be transportation. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is there any current activity that I'm probably unaware of collaborating emergency room documentation with police or I'm feeling in an awkward position. I will discuss that with you after the meeting.
Let's hear.
Well, generally we don't have people come back for public comment, but just 2 minutes, okay. If you'd have to come to the podium for a brief answer from one of our. This is
hospitals must report all serious injuries to the federal government. All they have to do is share that data with the city. There's already a system going on.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that's enlightening, and I guess I would encourage us to maybe explore that, if possible, with all your spare time. If it really could be done electronically, it might be a really nifty thing. I don't know. Just an idea. Susan's an old public health person, too, nodding with me. Ed, would you? Oh, yeah.
I had a few comments I wanted to share. So first, I just want to commend staff. I think this is an excellent strategy that you put together, and a vast improvement over the previous iteration back in February. So I want to thank you all for taking seriously the comments heard from this committee, from the dais and independently, and from the public as well. It definitely is reflected in what we've seen here tonight. And I have a few key points. One, I wanted to share my support for the move from a plan to a strategy. In my day job, I am responsible for overseeing the implementation of a multi-year, very formal plan. It is rigid and it is difficult to implement, and I would really love to have the flexibility of a strategy to be able to adapt to changing conditions, priorities, and in particular funding sources. So I don't want to, belittle plans overall, but I think that a strategy accomplishes the purpose of clearly stating what the vision is, what you're trying to accomplish, how you're going to do it, but also remaining fluid and adaptable to changing conditions. So definitely support that. Second, I also wanted to echo my support for the inclusion of the core principles. I think those are really nice and tight and succinct, as well as being bold and clear, and really highlighting the importance of public safety and the value of all lives, regardless of your transportation mode. It also think it takes it, it really keeps it at the forefront of people's mind, and it makes it easier to integrate into future decision making and being able to reference back to without having to know a specific page number, way down in the weeds of the strategy itself. Along those lines of being able to refer back to, I would be supportive of some way to kind of integrate a connection for future council items back to the Vision Zero strategy. So an analogy I would make is that I know there's been an effort by the city to try to integrate a standard impact statement related to environmental sustainability in the council action reports. It would be nice to see something similar to that, or maybe even embedded with that related to the vision strategy, the Vision Zero strategy. Third, I also wanted to kind of highlight what I view as an important kind of messaging and education focus by distinguishing between locals and non-locals. Just to give a personal example, I am a very active pedestrian all over Santa Barbara, and I run at pretty much the same time every morning. And I feel very safe and very comfortable no matter where I am, even at intersections during the weekdays, because I think that as a community, we're used to very active ped and bike users of our transportation system, but I don't think that's at the forefront of visitors to our community's mind. So it would be nice to have targeted messaging towards visitors that kind of just heightens to them the importance of what an active pedestrian and bicycle and potentially scooter-oriented community we are, and just to kind of put that at the forefront of their minds. I also wanted to show my support for the idea of kind of providing equitable reporting statistics, no matter how a life is lost or endangered. The reason for that doesn't matter. Every life matters just the same, as you point out in your core principles, and that should be equally acknowledged and prioritized and funded. So definitely supportive of that. And then the final thing I would end on is just that in line with some of the public comment received tonight, I would be supportive of whatever the city decides related to scooters and e-bikes and kind of shared mobility overall, that it certainly be consistent with the Vision Zero strategy. I think that would be poor form to adopt a strategy and immediately ignore it. So, thanks.
I believe Ed has been patiently waiting.
Rare. Difficult to follow, very well-spoken points. I am so appreciative of the city and the approach here, particularly even within specific projects already, seeing the public works mindset and approach towards projects. I really do. This is not just, this is not just talk. Having the privilege of getting to see Mr. Bailey approaching some of these chronic problems and the mindset and the approach shifting, I think that you all are doing this right. So I'm very appreciative of this shift, which has gone through various iterations within Public Works. I am thrilled that the police department is set to present collision data when they present public safety information. Public safety. It's great. I'm really looking forward to their buy-in in Vision Zero continuing to grow, and also the team approach of Vision Zero. You know, planning, public works, public health, community members, kind of like a Law and Order, NCIS, you know, really kind of getting at it, right? Anytime there's like a postmortem, okay, you know, cracking the case, you know, how could this really have been prevented? And one of the shifts that I would like to see, you know me, I'm going to have to get a little nitpicky. So here are some specifics. One of those approaches I'd like to see are how Office of Traffic Safety grants are approached by the police department. I would really like to see no further Office of Traffic Safety grants go forward unless the collaborative group really feels good about the approach. And it's not just, you know, a last minute grant that maybe PD was able to get. Because the bike and ped stings, it feels to many members of this community that the methodology isn't fully sussed out, and that it was just an opportunity, and that they can nominally say, yes, we're improving public safety. And I think that this approach and a better interdepartmental group, you know, work product for all of the elements related to Vision Zero can help change that. As Ms. Blackerby pointed out, there's a problem there. That's something that needs to be addressed. I really appreciated Frank Peters' sign, which I like to challenge Frank at every turn. So I think, you know, move beyond the sign, right? And specifically, and again, I'm in nitpicky world here, but State Street, right? We're, you know, last week, you know, this marathon session, we're talking about State Street.
Yeah.
You know, we certainly, as you mentioned in terms of Vision Zero, we wouldn't want no pedestrians on State Street. We wouldn't want no bicyclists on State Street. That's one way to solve, you know, to address Vision Zero, but that's clearly not something that we're going to do. And in fact, we want more people walking on State Street. We want more people biking on State Street. If I had my druthers, I would like people to be able to skateboard, not on the sidewalk, but on the street. And there are ways that, in fact, have been already discussed. You know, we can solve problems like this sign by reducing turn movements through structural changes that could actually better facilitate Vision Zero goals and goals like bike share, or even, if it's to come, scooters for State Street. So I appreciate the thinking, and I think that we can get beyond signage, which even the sign could be improved for sure, but there's still people turning left in the middle of the day, every single day, that cause conflicts. And you know, there's certain things that actually I'd love the opportunities to work with the staff. You left turn movements is something I've learned from you all. That's a major conflict point. Finding ways that we can reduce that. So I guess, you know, in sum, I really appreciate the tack that the city is making. I do want to say one more thing about data and statistics. Actually, I'll say two more things. But so on data and statistics, I really appreciate folks like Dr. Dan coming in and taking a different perspective on the data. And it's not that one data set is necessarily fatally flawed and another data set is more correct. It's that there are different ways to look at the problem. And we have to continue to look at these problems with different ways and take a skeptical approach. And I think we are so blessed in this community to have experts like on the dais, like in this community and in the room, that can help challenge us. And hopefully we can find a more formalized way to integrate in to the group that might actually, you know, post-mortem look at collisions. And lastly, you know, again to that topic of should we try to be more restrictive about bikes and peds and potential for scooters? I think things like that are within our control, like you're alluding to, Mr. Dayton, about speed, and are there, you know, key connections with helmets? Absolutely. Anything that's within our control, we need to do. But what's outside of our control, or perhaps inappropriate for us to try to control, I think we absolutely shouldn't. And actually, I appreciated the tack that Mr. Marsden was making but I want to share one and end on one like fact, which is, bicycling can be dangerous. I've been involved in 2 crashes, one quite severe. However, for every moment that you bike, you actually, for every hour, you extend your average healthy expected lifespan by over an hour. We are sedentary people, unfortunately, and we need movement. And, addressing other public health issues are something that active transportation, like walking or biking, can help address. So even with all the collisions, like Ms. Scott pointed out, very legitimate. But just having a more active populace, the health benefits actually override the deleterious effects of those collisions. So putting everything, in context is really important. So anyway, I want to appreciate this community and this work. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm ready to hear a motion if anybody would like to make one.
I have some more observations.
Okay.
If you'd go to the next slide, please. I commented on this and the need for corridor and traffic volume, but I also mapped the presentation, the City Council presentation draft, with the sequence of activities. I'm assuming the ones that are higher in the list are more important than ones lower in the list. It doesn't match the sequence of these. In other words, these, the highest one on this chart is State Street, and it's ninth in the report. In other words, your action plans have a sequence.
I see what you're saying.
And it just seems out of line.
Well, there's a simple solution. We'll just put them in order.
There are 23 on this chart. There are only 16 action plans, if that's the right word to describe these. But it's tremendous work.
Yeah.
I had one other point, but go ahead. Oh, thank you.
I did want to address the no left turn sign, which is vexing to many, a cyclist anyway. And I actually pulled up a picture, which I'm happy to share with anyone after, that I took of in San Francisco in the financial district. They've similar no left turn, but they have, so this one I'm looking at is no left turn 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, except, and then it has these cute little icons for a bus, bike, taxi, or a truck. I may agree or disagree with some of those 4 called out, but it does show that it's either people on bikes or people who, in theory, are professional drivers, who are held to a higher standard than, say, any Tom, Dick, or Harry behind the wheel of a car. And so there's just one thing to think about if we go in that direction to edit that kind of thing. There's certainly other places that have dealt with that in different ways, that maybe there's either a higher level of expectation of who may make that left-hand turn, or a bike that can be a little more nimble. So.
Okay, Howard, you had one more point, I think.
Thank you. I'm observing that you've included Resolution 16-170 from last December. Is there a plan to publish a revised resolution for public comment?
No, the resolution sets the policy, and there's no need to revise it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right.
I'd be happy to make the motion.
Please.
I would move that we, let me get it exactly right, that the committee recommend that council adopt the Santa Barbara Vision Zero Strategy 2030.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I thought that's what we just did. But if you have some more go right ahead. if we're not finished with discussion.
I'd add the word enthusiastically.
Well,
I will
like
take
that.
that if the seconder is okay with enthusiastically. Better put that in the staff report. I'm going to look for that word. That's fine with me.
that's a great idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall we re-vote on that?
We're going to recommend that the committee, what did you say?
I
The word
said
was
the word was that the committee
recommend.
recommend that council enthusiastically adopt the Santa Barbara Vision Zero Strategy 2030.
No, I think the enthusiastically comes before the recommendation.
I don't know.
We'll get out of here. We'll be out of here by 9
Heck,
o'clock,
repeat
I'm
it.
sure. The committee, we're enthusiastically recommending.
All right.
Yep.
I want
that
them to
we want
enthusiastically
everyone
adopt
to be
it.
enthusiastic. We are enthusiastically
That's
recommending
fine.
this report, this document to City Council. Is that right? Okay. There we go.
Fair enough.
Okay, everybody in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye, aye. All in favor? Yay, thank you very much.
Yay.
Okay, now we're going to hear about the car share update.
So I'd like to, with less enthusiasm,
Are we going to not be enthusiastic now? We're going to calm down? Okay.
introduce Dan Gullett, our supervising transportation planner, to give us an update on car share.
Good evening, Madam Chair. So this is an update on the implementation of the city's car share ordinance. So the car share ordinance was adopted by City Council in October 2015. We have one car share operator in the city right now. It's Zipcar. Your committee received an update on Zipcar back in November of last year. Zipcar has gone through a lot of changes over the past several years. The market landscape has changed dramatically over this time. Your committee urged us to work with Zipcar on their marketing. We've been disappointed in Zipcar's marketing. We have worked with City Channel 18 and had a plan to advertise for Zipcar, and there's been little interest on Zipcar's part. And you can see by attachment 2 the usage over this time period. So Zipcar started in March 2017. They have a 5-year contract with the city until 2022. The usage data is shown in attachment 2. Initially, there were 10 locations that were required of Zipcar. Zipcar was required to have 10 locations for 6 months. And our contract with Zipcar allows either party to reduce or eliminate cars over time. It's been difficult interacting with Zipcar. They haven't been as responsive as we have liked, and our contacts with Zipcar have changed over time too. So just to speak to their usage data, according to the Zipcar representative, to break even on any car, they need 40% usage. So the percentage usage is just when it's used over time. So as an indicator, 5% usage is about an average of 1 hour a day a month. That's 5% usage. Zipcar only hit the 40% mark once in July 2017. There was a large initial effort. There were discounted rides or free rides given to the community. There was a ribbon cutting. Zipcar was very present during that time. And in restructuring, it's been clear from our interactions with Zipcar staff that their focus is on larger markets. So them looking at the data, they are reducing their fleet on our streets and in our garages to 2 cars. So we're the cars that are left are Sola de la Vina and then City Lot 6, which is Granada Garage. And even those cars haven't hit their utilization mark. Zipcar said they're committed to retain some presence locally. The good news is our contract with Zipcar is non-exclusive. The locations are exclusive, and there's other opportunities for car share in Santa Barbara. So we did reach out to SB Car Share, which responded to our initial request for proposals. They do have interest in coming on street and into our garages, so we will be talking to them. The other opportunities include our zoning ordinance allows for car share on multifamily properties, so apartments can switch out parking spaces for car share. There's a limited percentage. Mixed-use projects, non-residential. So car share can be on private property. They wouldn't be subject to this ordinance or any contract. We're also seeing new technology. So now there's peer-to-peer, there's apps, so you can make your own car available. That's not something that's addressed in our city ordinance. So the city ordinance is about exclusive rights for these companies to use sections of curb, spaces in our garages. So the technology is allowing for more flexibility in that. We haven't been contacted by any car share companies that are interested in coming. We do want the city to have this opportunity. We think there is viability in car share. It's been talked about as supportive of our multifamily projects, the average unit size density program. So we are looking into different avenues of making this work. So it's a bit of bad news and some hopeful news, but I'm available for questions.
Thank you for the update. I do have 2 clarifying questions, both related to the Zipcar usage chart. One is I still don't quite understand what the percentages are showing by location and by month. I'm not sure what the time period is.
So the time period is the entire month.
But is it like percent of hours used that month, percent of days, like one time in a day? Does that count? Minutes?
It's percent of the month that it's used. So it's percent of time. So it's time over time.
Okay, thank you. And then for the 2 remaining locations where there are remaining Zipcars, do we have any statistics on the users of those remaining vehicles?
We've requested that information, and we've offered to Zipcar, help in relocating. We had some ideas about relocating cars and what populations might be interested in those. Our request for user data, Zipcar said that was proprietary information. So part of this process for us has been learning about how to do this. We're seeing other sharing opportunities, including bike share. So with bike share, we would be wanting a contract that requires data sharing. So we understand this too, because the city's interests don't always fully align with the vendor's interests.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. So did you get tasked with this presentation because you're leaving Public Works?
I would say I volunteered for this presentation because of guilt of leaving Public Works, and for those who don't know, I'm moving to long range planning. So one of my core principles is not to weep during public hearings, so this has been a privilege, and I'm very proud of the work that you guys do and the work we're doing with our streets.
And can we like make you an honorary member of Public Works Transportation Team? Oh, yeah, good, got that covered. So I can't let you go easy. Quick question: do we have any similar usage data from UCSB or Isla Vista?
We did have that data back in November. I didn't ask for new data because the school year hasn't started, or
Yeah, what kind of percentages were they at?
they were higher. I recall them being in the 20 to 30% range.
And those programs remain subsidized.
My understanding is UCSB is no longer subsidized, but I may be wrong.
Okay.
But it was initially.
Cool. Thanks.
We do have 2 requests for public comment. Would anyone like to ask questions now or wait till we have our comments? Speaker? Okay, then let's go with Anna Marie. Would you like to come back?
Anna Marie Gott. I was just going to actually ask when we're just going to kill Zipcar. And you answered my question, which is, well, it's almost dead, but we're going to try to revive it. And we might actually try to revive it by reducing the required parking for our housing units. And the places where they want to do it is right downtown. It could be understandable, but we're now going to be parking a vehicle in our parking structure 24/7 whenever it's not in use, which then does not allow someone else to actually park there. I have some big issues with having AUD downtown when we have not even done the due diligence and actually implemented an ordinance that actually says we are going to charge impact fees and we are going to have inclusionary housing. And that's a failure of our mayor, and it is a failure of our city council. But saying that we're basically going to now have zip cars, and that is a great way for our multifamilies buildings for something like an AUD, when we can't even pencil this out for our residents, is just, I think, ridiculous. But I didn't actually even come here today to even talk about Zipcar, but when you started talking about it and I saw it actually was on the agenda, I thought maybe I would just say something about it, because I really think we're doing the wrong things for our residents and we're trying to make developers rich. And we don't have our eye on the ball. And we should have actually taken Zipcar out a long time ago because it's not being used. I drove, I don't know how many times up and down Milpas. I hardly ever saw that Zipcar moved. And it's gone now, finally. But we're just trying to, get a horse to water, and we can't. We can't make people use these things. And so the only way you're going to make them use them is take away the parking for the housing and then force them to use it that way. That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And are you Joanna Kaufman?
I am.
Okay.
I was being a little smug, like getting up before you called my name, so I apologize. But thank you, Chair Rodriguez and committee. I do agree with one point that Ms. Gott made, that I think Zipcar is now an obsolete model. When it first came into the scene, and sorry to clarify, I'm the program director with Coast, but when it first came on the scene, there was a different world, and then ride hailing became a big deal, Uber and Lyft, and so I think that kind of took away some of the market. But car sharing has also evolved quite a bit since Zipcar came around, and I can't say that I know the technical knowledge of what would attract certain car share vendors to Santa Barbara or not, but to look into seeing if there's any viability for some of these companies that don't, I keep using this term, but instead of docked car share, if there's any viability with using car share models where they can be parked anywhere around town, similar to other shared mobility options. One example is Car2Go. And also, maybe the city can also, promote some of these peer-to-peer car sharing options that are coming around, because a fact is that cars are parked 95% of the time. So I think it's a win-win. Car owners can make a little extra money, and also make sure that, cars are utilized a little bit more. And I feel like there's a lot of overlap with this, with, any conversation about shared mobility, but also taking in consideration kind of equity options and, doing a better job of marketing, especially to groups that don't own cars because they either, can't afford them, low income. But I also like the opportunity to incorporate this into multifamily development, companies like Envoy, which provide car sharing as an amenity. And I don't know if, similar to the other ordinances that are being created for scooters and bicycles, maybe have more of a piloted approach and give it a fixed time frame to revisit if you want to continue the contracts. Honestly, I don't know what the contract was with Zipcar, if that was, a fixed time period. But since this technology is developing so rapidly, I think it would be good to be able to have the ability to revisit it, terminate contracts, companies come and go. So I think it would be in the best benefit. And lastly, or a couple more points, data sharing importance and making sure that whoever you partner with is going to provide good data. And I'd also maybe talk to local hotels and see what their interest is with this as well, to market that to people that are staying in the hotel if they choose to come to Santa Barbara without a car. But I am really excited. I see the Zipcar going out is opening more doors for other options. So it's a good time in the transportation world.
Well, thank you for your comments. Well, this was not an action item, so do we have any more discussion about this report? Hillary?
I appreciate you bringing us back to us, and it is really disappointing. And I think the biggest disappointment is, I went to the ribbon cutting. I was really excited. I signed up, whatever, it was a cheap deal at Earth Day last year. Unfortunately, I re-upped my membership, and then, a few weeks later, noticed where'd all the cars go. And to be honest, I didn't use it. But I was like, I want to support this. I think it is good. And if I didn't have my own car, and I hope someday to fully shed it, it would be a big part of my world. But this is definitely a cautionary tale. And I think, it was a new space for the city when you moved into this contract. But again, and all these agenda items are really linked in the we bring private industry into our city to provide some kind of transportation, component. They have their goals. We have our goals. Sometimes they match. Sometimes they don't. The marketing thing, I think they really just left us high and dry. They cut the ribbon and took off. And after Earth Day, didn't hear a single thing. You saw the cars, but that's it. And so that it worries me about all the sharing going on or planned, that companies come and go. Also, they could be responsive in marketing things. They could be responsive in safety, rebalancing, whatever. And they can be non-responsive in all these things. And so hopefully we're going eyes wide open into any other kind of sharing or RFP or permitting or whatever we do with this. And we'll remember, don't let it turn out like Zipcar did. But I do think there still is some space for this, and hopefully we can figure that out. But obviously things are changing, and they're not going to be participating, it seems like, and it's unfortunate it's a 5-year contract.
I'm curious about the rental agreement, this part of this overall plan. Does it allow them to give up the spaces and therefore not pay the city? Thank you.
Zipcar only pays when the spaces are exclusive for Zipcar, so they will only be paying for the 2 remaining.
And have you removed the signage, or have they removed the signage at the other 8 locations?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, so I have a lot of laments on this. I think Ms. Blacker and I have similar laments, but we differ in that, and I chided the city last time around. I'm going to do the same thing. And unfortunately, Dan, I can't chase you out to long-range planning to work on this. But here's the thing, for the county, we have transportation demand management, which we do, and there's traffic solutions, there's transportation demand management, which is mostly employer-based. We have a robust parking system, and we have great transportation work and programs. But what we don't have, and we have residential parking programs, but what we don't have is parking demand management, which is kind of crazy considering how every single housing, any development ever, it's like parking. Because I'm a downtown denizen, downtown is impacted for parking. And was it written in the city charter that every city resident gets parking at their house and wherever they're going? Whenever they're going. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I can't be sure. But the problem is that people expect that. And when that expectation can't be met, there's a lot of frustration. And I believe that it actually is one of the biggest barriers to our housing problem, to building more sufficient housing, is the parking problem. And so, the selling line for this program was that every one of these cars in use prevents the need for 20 residents to have their own car on the street. And at, maybe it's the 40% or whatever is that kind of key use, it's true. I went the last 3 years without a car. That was a car that was not on the street because I was tired of parking on the street. And I bike pretty much 7 days a week. Didn't really need it. And I used the program like twice, right? It was nice to have. But what was so surprising was how few people knew about it. And the thing is, for multimodal transportation, which especially for downtown residents, and when you look at all the charts of where downtown residents work, most of them work downtown. Even if that's downtown Goleta. But for they're in downtown Goleta. They want people who choose to live in the more expensive, more constrained environments tend to live there because they work there. But yet, we're just like, there's something missing. And this was a piece of the puzzle. This was a tool in the toolbox, and unfortunately, it's fallen to some level of disuse. So, I'm not going to blame Zipcar. And I'm not going to blame the city staff. But I am going to point out that I think that we're kind of missing an opportunity. We invest so much resource into maintaining the parking structure system, and yet we don't really have a demand management approach. And so if there's one, gain, hopefully that we can shift and begin that somehow between transportation and downtown parking, because here was a tool, it didn't achieve what it needed to do, and I have plenty of opinions about that. But moving forward, we do need to do something to give residents more choice so that there are less cars sitting unused on the street all day long. End of rant. Thank you.
is that that might be the final word on that point, and well taken. Thank you very much. All right, shall we move along to the bike share update?
Sure, absolutely. So this is where I was going to make the announcement of Dan leaving, and thank you very much. I think it worked out well. Thanks, committee member France.
Yeah, for usurping.
Seems like every
Rob's-
time we have a meeting, someone leaves. I hope we don't have to discontinue our meetings for that reason. But since the last person left at the last meeting, we have a new mobility coordinator. His name is Sam Fortner. And so we're going to welcome him and give him an opportunity to present to you for the first time, but we're very pleased about him. We had a broad outreach process, and we included a lot of our partners in the decision that will be dealing with Sam. So he was the guy that rose to the top. We're very excited about him being here. So welcome, Sam.
And Sam
you,
will
Robin.
pronounce his name correctly for us.
My name is Sam Furtner.
Thank you.
Furtner. Yes. F-U,
Not
correct.
Fortner.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just like to kind of reiterate Rob's comment that I'm very happy to be here as well. This is a really unique opportunity to work with a really dynamic team in a very rapidly changing field. And I don't feel like I could have found a better fit. So I'm happy to be here and to meet all of you tonight, those of you that I don't know. And I'm also pleased that the discussion this evening has really set us up well for what we're going to talk about now. Bike share is a really multifaceted thing, and what I'm coming to you with tonight is more of a high-level recommendation as far as pitfalls to look out for moving forward, thinking about designing an effective bike share ordinance for the city of Santa Barbara. So right now we're in kind of an environment that has been shaped by our past. The 2011 circulation element of the general plan actually stated that the city should promote and provide shared cost personal transportation options such as bike share. The 2016 bike master plan also maintains that bike share can be a convenient, cost-effective, and healthy way to make short trips and to bridge the first last mile between public transportation and final destinations. So looking at how history has shaped policy here in Santa Barbara, it's really interesting to point out that we're going to see some real change happening in the very near future. Hopper is a bike share company that will be launching at UCSB hopefully by the end of August. And just to put this out there, but students are going to be renting these on campus, and we'll definitely be taking them to Isla Vista and Goleta. And I think that Hopper's kind of setting the stage for regional usage and also introducing the idea of regional bike share here in the South Coast. Hopper will be rolling out several different types of bikes through their pilot program at UCSB. And with that, I'd like to get into a little bit more about the two main bike share systems that we see in effect. Currently, there are two systems, as I mentioned, a docked system, which you can see a photo of here, and generally involve a larger rack that can accommodate a large number of bikes, as well as an information placard or some kind of a poster that describes the process of renting a bike, in addition to an electronic payment kiosk where you actually check the bike out to start your ride. There are some drawbacks to a docked system, namely that it involves really significant infrastructure requirements, especially at the beginning implementation. Because of these infrastructure requirements, it can be quite expensive. There have been some estimates that recommend that to have an effective docked bike share system, you need to have a station every 1,000 feet. So because of that as well, docked bike share can be quite inconvenient because you are limited to the locations where these stations are based. If a station is not outside your work, you need to return the bike and then walk to your work. So what we see now, kind of in response to this docked system, is the emergence of a Doclist System. And these are essentially free-floating bicycles that do not need to be returned to a designated rack. They are genuinely GPS enabled, and there's been a really high demand for this technology in a lot of shared mobility, including scooters and dockless bike share. Some of the benefits of this type of system is that you can literally check this bike out wherever it might be. If it's in a certain area and it's on the sidewalk where it should be parked in the furniture zone out of the right of way, then it's wide open for you to check it out. The moment you unlock the bike with your smartphone and it releases that actual mechanism through the rear wheel, you've rented it and it's yours until you take it to your final destination. At your final destination, you simply close your app or sign out of it and your rental period ends. So it's really effective for short trips and last mile transit. Additionally, because of the amount of competition happening right now and the lack of real infrastructure requirements for this application, a lot of companies are offering dockless bike share for low or no cost to cities. So the entry price point is a lot lower with dockless. So some of the challenges of a dockless system are that it can be difficult to control, honestly. There's been a lot of blowback on the kind of dockless bike share nightmare. We see it with scooters as well. But what we have here on the right is a photo of Dallas bike share. And you can see that there are definite right-of-way issues happening, and there's a huge pile of abandoned, perhaps, or knocked over bicycles. So a lot of this involves user interface, which is really difficult to control. So, and we see that it can indeed, block paths of travel. So with these kind of ideas in mind, we wanted to think about shaping an ordinance that would address some of these really key issues. And we'll definitely be going into detail more on these, but I wanted to just introduce what we've been considering. Firstly, as I mentioned, sidewalk nuisance. I think it's important that a vendor should address these nuisances or damaged bicycles even in a really prompt fashion. We've seen this with scooter share elsewhere, bike share indeed. Poorly parked bicycles may block sidewalks or entryways, as I mentioned, and this can, in fact, limit or prevent ADA access, which is a huge issue. So we need to see prompt response times. Additionally, and related to that, we need to see vendor responsibility demonstrated. We need to be able to hold our permitted vendor accountable for their actions, and to some extent, as possible, the actions of their users, especially in relation to sidewalk nuisance and poor parking. And one thing that we'd really like to see under vendor responsibility is that we start this program with a small scale and a short-term pilot permit. And the idea behind this is if a vendor is not being responsible and they're not holding up their part of the deal, then at the end of that permit, it just doesn't renew and we can move forward accordingly. Additional considerations are data accessibility, which has been mentioned several times here tonight. We really want to ensure that the city has timely access to data. Mainly, we're looking at user data, which can give us trends and behaviors of where customers are taking these rented bikes. And this, in turn, can help us figure out the ideal sighting locations for these bikes and where they'll be best used and how they're getting used as well. That being said, we also want to ensure that customers that are renting these bikes feel that their privacy is being respected and their security as well. So most data that is provided from bike share is anonymized, so you don't actually know the username. You just see lines on a map, essentially. Another big issue is equity that we want to focus on. We need to see a bike share vendor that can ensure access for disadvantaged communities. And some cities throughout the states have actually implemented a percentile that a bike share company needs to maintain of their fleet in identified disadvantaged communities, just to keep access for those people that might be underserved otherwise. And similarly, along that line, the vendor needs to be able to provide options for low-income individuals, unbanked individuals, or those without access to smartphones, to ensure that they can also, utilize these services in their neighborhood. So another couple things, and I promise there's only a few more, but marketing, which I think is relevant in a city like Santa Barbara, we need to work to minimize the aesthetic impacts of marketing, and certainly to ensure consistency with the look and the feel of Santa Barbara. Availability is another thing to discuss. We need to make sure that our vendor can provide sufficient numbers and effective rebalancing. Rebalancing, I just mean simply collecting bikes at the end of the night and redistributing them to the locations where they will be of most service throughout the next day. And as I said, this relates to high traffic locations, transit hubs where, these bikes as a last mile solution are going to be especially important, and also the previously mentioned disadvantaged communities. And lastly, an issue that has definitely surfaced this evening is safety. And we need to do whatever we can to ensure that our vendor is really doing what they can to provide the education and the safety and lawful operation guidance to their customers. And part of that is maintaining the bike fleet in safe working condition. And another part of that is actually encouraging and incentivizing safe ridership. So we need to see this in a vendor. And of course, just to adhere to any specific safety requirements that we list in the perimeter of the ordinance. So moving forward with bike share in the city of Santa Barbara, I think the next step is to work with the city attorney, local advocacy groups, and certainly downtown business owners and just business owners throughout the city to develop effective bike share ordinance that can address these key issues. With that, I'd just like to open it up to comments or questions and say thank you.
I'd like to open with a little question, just on a practical level. If I wanted to open a bike and go to 3 or 4 stores and maybe buy a couple of things, do I have to have my own bike lock in between? I mean, if I check it out?
That's a good question. So it depends on the type of technology that's being used. With a lot of Doclist systems, and I won't say all, but a lot of Doclist bike shares, they actually have a built-in wheel lock, which you can see in that photo on the left. So essentially, and this is the tricky thing with shared mobility. Per your example, if you were to check this bike out on the street, take it with you to a grocery store, and then decide to go in the store and do your errands, if you lock the bike by signing out of the app, it becomes available, meaning that somebody else walking down the street a block away will look at their phone and see that bike as being available, and they can then rent it. And we have seen people doing things to kind of foil this, wherein like they will hide a bike in a certain area, or people have been very inventive with this. But so that is a limitation, certainly, and hopefully that is addressed by having a sustainable number of bicycles accessible, so that even if you came out of the store and your bike was gone, there was another one a block away.
Interesting.
Question. First, excellent presentation and welcome. Excited to work with you. And my question is, I didn't quite understand the relationship between the staff report and your presentation focused on bicycle share and the attachment that was predominantly focused on scooters. Is this separate? Are they related? Are you integrating the two? Are they being treated separately?
Perfect. I'm really glad you asked that question, and it's something that we foresaw definitely going into this. And I think I would just like to say that what we're looking at here, especially as an example of Doclist utility and Doclist shared mobility, which has a tremendous amount of similarity to what we're going to see in scooter share. For right now, scooter share is tabled, and we're trying to focus on implementation of effective bike share here in Santa Barbara. That being said, I think there are a lot of parallels between the two, and I think that any ordinance that we come up with for bike share specifically is going to have a lot of the same tenets of an ordinance for scooter share or permit for scooter share if that happens. We're seeing a real dramatic evolution in shared mobility, and it's happening very quickly. And so, to my way of thinking, having an adaptable trial period for this and just kind of see what happens and how this technology can actually work here in the city is the first step to even understanding what the future of shared mobility is going to be here. Did I answer your question, or do you need further?
There's a little bit more clarification I would do. Another way to say what Sam's saying is we have bike share in the plan, in the circulation element, so we've been moving forward with it. We've been doing it in different ways, primarily with the lead of the coalition and a bunch of stakeholders who've come along with the contract at UCSB. And that's how we've been doing the rollout. In the midst of that, we had the imminent possibility of a rogue scooter launch and decided to go with an emergency ordinance that dictated rules and regulations whereby companies would be vetted, certain requirements would be made, and then selected. So because of that advent, we decided that the best approach would be to have bike share in the ordinance as well and implement bike share along the same lines, where we're saying, here's the ordinance, here's the rules and regulations, here's how we expect companies to behave and respond, and this is our vetting process. And it's not Sam misspoke a little bit. Scooter share is not tabled. It's just going very slow. We had a listening workshop. It's a little bit more controversial than bike share, but still there are similar issues.
Okay, thank you. And one more follow-up question for either of you. Will bike share allow the use of electrically powered bikes, or is it only human powered?
That's a good question. Right now, I can tell you what is happening at UCSB, wherein they're going to start with 3-speed pedal-driven bicycles, and they do have plans to phase in some electric assist bicycles as well. We haven't gotten to that point yet where we're going to figure out what's going to happen as far as electric assist here in Santa Barbara, but I think that will be an informative thing to see how it works at UCSB.
Thank you.
A very good question. I'll answer part of that, and then I'd appreciate it if one of you gentlemen can take over. But helmets are obviously a very pressing thing, and enforcement is going to be challenging, certainly. But part of the reason for that is it's a bit of a moving target. Bikes have different helmet requirements than do scooters. And hopefully Rob can break that down for you a little bit.
So I'll tell you if you want to know about scooters. I think I told you in a different presentation, but just to focus on the bike share. A person who rides a bike is required to have a helmet if they're 16 or under, but there is no requirement above that age.
And scooters? What's the rule? Yes, we do.
Yeah, you are required to have a helmet if you're riding a scooter.
Okay, then electric bike.
So there's a class distinction for electric bikes, wherein below a certain mile per hour range, you're not required, and it's still classified as a bicycle essentially, and above a certain mile per hour range, you are required to wear a helmet. So that's the kind of thing that I don't think that Hopper will be releasing those at UCSB, but we don't know at this point. So I think that there's a lot more regulatory difficulty in implementing something like that with a higher speed. Some electric assist bicycles can go almost 30 miles an hour. So,
If I understand you correctly, you're assuming that the UCSB bikes are going to be the lower miles per hour ones, at least at first. You're hoping.
Yeah. That's my impression from speaking with representatives from CycleHop as well as staff at UCSB.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more clarifying questions? We can get some comments too. Go ahead, Howard.
The UCSB program, you said the time frame was August.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the number of locations? Are they docked or dockless? What more can you tell us about that?
I'm glad you asked that. So I'm not a UCSB representative, obviously, but I have been working closely with them to understand the ins and outs of their bike share program. And I can tell you that UCSB will be getting 300 bikes, hopefully by the end of August. And then another 300 right before the quarter starts on September 24th. And ultimately, a good bit more in January. These bikes are going to be dockless, but they are going to have a specific location where they need to be locked. So they're going to work these bikes into the UCSB bike infrastructure. They will not be adding new bike racks on campus. So effectively, they're dockless, but they're going to have to integrate into bike racks on campus. You're welcome.
Okay, I think we might be ready for some public comment. Anna Marie. Oh, she's up again. There you go.
So let's cut to the chase. You're going to have more bikes. You're going to have more accidents because you are going to have people riding without helmets. It's a fact, and you just actually looked at Vision Zero. Unless you require helmets, you will experience that. Absolutely. The cost, someone was saying something about the cost for a docked system. I believe it was Councilmember Friedman who started doing the numbers when he was trying to figure out $1 a ride, this much a minute. These are how many bikes, scooters, we're talking scooters, people were using over the course of a few days. Do you know what he calculated? It was over $1 million in revenue. And people were, excuse my French, bitching about a $5,000 permit. And now we're saying we're going to give the public right-of-way. You won't have to actually put your bicycle and attach it to anything. You're just going to leave it wherever it is, and you get to walk away. It's ridiculous. If you're going to have programs like this, don't leave them on the sidewalk. You have people that have mobility problems. You have people that have vision problems. These things are going to fall down and they will hurt someone. Someone will trip over them. And my question is, what is the responsibility and liability of the city when you have now permitted this? And you're not charging to actually put these things on the sidewalk. It's ridiculous. You should be putting this all in the parking structures if you're going to actually do this. And I'm sorry. The last mile, if everyone is really upset about how overweight and how people are worried about fitness levels, a mile takes 15 minutes, maybe 20 to walk. People can walk. They have two legs for the most part, and they are mobile enough to actually go from point A to point B. But we are trying to actually put all of these other things on the roads, and we're not thinking about the traffic issues, our infrastructure issues, our liability, and we are not thinking about the residents who are going to have to deal with these things. You saw that particular corner in Dallas. Imagine the bowl. Imagine Earth Day. Imagine Fiesta. And enforcement, you got to give me a break. Our city does not enforce, and our police officers at $175 an hour, we're going to have them chase after bikes? It's ridiculous. If you're going to actually allow something like this, you might actually start with some other type of a program, but not the one that you guys are talking about right now. Helmets are really needed. And data sharing, these companies don't like to share data. So if you need to find out information about an accident for the police or an injury, how are we going to get the data? And we don't even have any best practices, no analysis about what other cities that look like Santa Barbara do. What has worked and what has failed with the scooters or necessarily this. If you guys really, really want to have a good ordinance, that type of due diligence has to get done first before you try to throw something like a mocked up version of an ordinance for the scooters up for everyone to review. And rebalancing, for you guys to have rebalancing, which San Francisco requires every hour, they have to have people on the ground. If someone like the scooter people were actually paying a few people's salaries, it might actually help us, manage what's going to happen. But can you imagine a complaint-driven system where your residents are going to have to call up and say, there's a bicycle that's laying down on State Street. It's at the corner of Coda and State. Or are they going to call up someone else? How are they even going to manage it? They won't be able to manage it, and you will find 20 bikes somewhere piled up in a corner because no one's required to return them to a particular space. And they just leave them, like at the bus stop. Those are all things that you need to think about. Thank you.
Hi. Joanna Kaufman with Coast again. I'm really excited to see this moving along. I think this is a great opportunity. I want to speak to some things that are just, I think, should be taken in consideration, not just with bike share, but shared mobility in general. That might have not been addressed in the pretty comprehensive list that was put together and presented today by staff. So I just want to speak on the next level beyond availability and some considerations to take or to think about in the future. A lot of shared mobility options are moving towards what they're calling platformization. And so it's fully integrating, all the different shared mobility options into each other and also with transit to really make it simpler and more convenient for the user. And, bigger conversation to be happening down the line is maybe ID some goals with all of these modes. I haven't really heard that today, but overall, what is the city looking at to achieve and to really create a strategy around that? But I think that whoever the vendor is going to be should show some demonstrated ability to really work closely with government in preparation for that, because things are changing rapidly, but we should think down the line, what direction we should be heading with all of this. But I enthusiastically look forward to seeing the bikes out there sooner than later.
Thank you very much. Frank Peters. You're very welcome.
My name is Frank Peters with SB Bike, and wow, where to start? I'm a new resident to Santa Barbara. I haven't been here even 2 years. I came from Portland, Oregon, where I was an early adopter with their bike share. I called them the green bikes, but the city called them Nike. It branded them. So that was definitely the old model. They were docked. And I was fortunate they had an extra large docking station right in front of my apartment building. So I love that. And with a partner like Nike, wow, what can go wrong? There's money to do anything is just beautiful. System. Portlanders, maybe they feel a little underdog, being up there in Portland. I don't know. They love to brag, and they were bragging in less than 90 days. They had logged 1 million miles on their bike share. Jeez. So is that successful? I think wildly successful, and they continue to do that. They were running promotions this summer and just continued to break records. One of the things I observed seeing was, remember, they were all docked. Took the Bike Coalition up there last September for a 5-day tour of the city to meet people. First thing we did was take an all-morning ride on their bike share system by their bike share people. And they had expanded the original footprint was one size, but people liked it so much it was expanding beyond the footprint where they had put docks, right? So that was how dockless bike share kind of evolved into Portland. The bicycle could be locked to a street post or a street sign, something like that. But if you did that, so if you went out of the footprint, they'd charge you $2. However, if somebody came along, 5 minutes later, unlocked the bike and rode it back into the footprint area, they would earn $1. So isn't that kind of clever and simple and, seemed to work out. Perhaps I'll wrap up with, I've been to Amsterdam a number of times. And one time I did a whole photo shoot of, everybody's on bicycles. It wasn't until I got home, the big question in my mind was, did I see a single person wearing a helmet? My intuition was, I don't think I did, but there's one picture, I can't tell if that's a helmet. It's a child. So lots of children, dads with kids in their arms and bicycles. It seems to work in a society there where everybody is riding a bike. And that, I think, is the goal of Bike Share Here, to get more people. There are comments in here in Sam's presentation about, bad behavior. People park the bike, drop the bike off in the wrong place. We will have that problem. I don't know, being a businessman, I don't know if, you can expect satisfaction from trying to, punish the vendor. I don't know if you're going to find satisfaction doing that. But over time, I believe, like in societies like in Copenhagen and Amsterdam, better behaviors evolve and people learn how to ride, and they don't need helmets for it to be a success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Jim Marston.
Madam Chairman and members, thank you again. My biggest concern that was just mentioned was safety and independent mobility for people with disabilities and the elderly. We just heard that everyone drives bikes in Europe. Did you see any blind people driving bikes? Did you see people in wheelchairs riding bikes? Did you see grandmas in 80 riding bikes? No. The everyone you see are the people who are young and fit, which is fine. But who are you going to cover? But my biggest fear is the sidewalk blockage. If you can change some, I'm not against bicycles at all. In fact, Dad, I've been here 24 years, never had a car. I'm a ped and a biker, okay? So, I'm not against bicycles, I'm against people leaving them. Think about this. The best thing about all the bike thieves in town, people lock their bikes to a bike rack, so they're not in the middle of State Street sidewalks. This thing has no way to keep you from parking any place. And that's our biggest fear. Blind people, wheelchair users, people with epilepsy, bad hearts, they're not going to be able to go round and around bikes. That picture of Dallas, I'm glad you showed it. I've seen those pictures all over the country. That's my biggest fear, is the safety of our sidewalks. We have a pedestrian master plan, which calls for certain widths on sidewalks. You guys have the circulation plan. We have the zero, but if you go do this at all, please make sure the sidewalks stay open. What I read today was it said you couldn't block egress and egress. That's the stores. Had nothing about the pedestrian on the sidewalk. Just don't block the store's doorway. That's not enough. Now, a lot of places have what's called geofencing, where you can just have a certain area on the street, or you could use one parking lane on each block where the bikes go. Or at least you have a little geo-coded place where you have to leave your bikes. It could be on every block. It could be 2 a block. And my other problem is what I read from your stuff today was about, there was nothing about rebalancing in what I read. Now, maybe it's there now. But think of this. I come from Ventura to Santa Barbara. I trust there's going to be a bicycle there at the station. I take it up to, let's say, Mission and State Street. I get out of work. I got 20 minutes to catch my train. There's no bike around. Okay? Without rebalancing, people are not going to trust these things. So they've got to be rebalanced. As she said, Santa Barbara or San Francisco's every hour. We need to address that, because if that bike isn't ready when I want to catch my train, I'm not going to do that anymore. And the last thing I want to say is about equity, besides being kind of against the disabled. I was at UCSB for many years. Everyone that rode a bike there could afford one. They were $50 or $100 if you want to buy a used one. I'm thinking about who the heck is rich enough, these kids, that can rent a bicycle every day to drive from IV to campus or from Glida to campus. It's daddy's money. It's not people like I was, who had to scrape and save. I would buy a $50 bike, okay, and it would last me 4 years or something. But if you can afford to ride a bike, I mean, really, Ed, how many people who bike here in town every day don't own the bike? So I know it's good for tourists or for transit, but I don't see how many people who ride bikes every day would want to rent one every day. So I'll stop now, but please make sure the sidewalks are clear and there's some kind of law that says you cannot block this, and the vandalism bikes will be taken care of. The same thing with scooters. A lot of people throwing them in the ocean, putting them in trash cans. Who's responsible to pick them up? And as Anna Marie said, who's responsible for any accidents caused by this? We are giving away free public taxpayer space. If you're a restaurant and wants to have outdoor seating, you have to pay a fee to use the public right-of-way. Somehow the scooter guys come in with $250 million in their pocket and just accept that we're going to write an ordinance for them. And then the bikes come in. But who's going to pay for that sidewalk that I used to pay for, and now someone else is putting their money-making stuff there? So to me, those are some equity questions, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. I think your point was clear. Comments? Hillary?
Really appreciate the engagement and people sticking around on this. And thank you, Sam, for your presentation. And I know that you are doing your due diligence and looking at best practices. You know, I'm a little, over the years that this has been a thing we've talked about, I'm like, we're kind of behind the times, right? But now I'm pretty glad we were, because there's so many like disasters when it comes to this in other cities, scooter or bike, that we're learning from. And it's not going to be perfect if we do it, but I'm glad, and I know that you're looking into that, because why reinvent the wheel and make the same mistakes that are made other places? And it really is changing so quickly. And so I know that we'll learn from all of that. In the, past 6 or 8 months, have served on the UCSB Bike Share committee as they've been selecting a vendor and rolling it out. And I'm glad that you're working directly with them, because we have a lot to learn from them. They're still learning, right? Things have been delayed and everything, but they had a very deliberative process. This wasn't in the presentation, but they did an RFP saying, show us what you got. We don't want to pay money for it. And, there's a bunch of different, it's a UC contract. So if you're familiar with those, they're very long and very thorough, and they take a long time to be executed for good reason in this case. And so, they were very deliberative in choosing Hopper, which was Cycle Hop, now Hopper, and are extracting quite a bit from them to give them the privilege of operating on campus, and then out into Isla Vista, being very deliberative about geofencing. very important, crucial to me. That's a deal breaker. If we don't have that, rebalancing happens with every bike share system. So I don't think we need to worry about. I mean, we need to be very specific about what we require, but it's going to happen. For me, when people are saying we're just giving free public right of way for these things, I should certainly hope not. And that both for what it costs for enforcement and just to take up public space. I mean, to me, it would be absolutely unacceptable. I would never vote for an ordinance that didn't extract the true cost of using the public right-of-way. We charge Zipcar, right, or whoever. If you want to rent a space or block off a space on a city street for car parking, you pay. If someone came up with a formula for what that costs, or in a city lot, you pay. So absolutely, you should do it for the sidewalk. I've used bike share in 2 cities, Vancouver, which is docked, and Sacramento this was a couple years ago, they had a pilot that was sort of semi-docked between Sacramento and West Sacramento. Had good experiences in both, and actually, to the helmet question, Vancouver was docked, and in British Columbia, it's the law that you wear a helmet on a bike, no matter your age. And they actually have helmets with each one. They lock through, and they have little helmet, kind of like hairnet type things that you get out of a little bin to use. And I did, and I always wear a helmet when I ride a bike, and so I felt much more comfortable with that. So that is possible. I know we're going on dock, so it's not really that feasible here, but it has happened, and people wear them. I've also been to San Diego, where I think it's not quite the level of disaster of Dallas, but I remember seeing maybe 5 different vendors of both scooters and bikes. They're littered everywhere, trip hazards galore, a mess, looks gross, honestly. And I didn't actually see that many people riding them. Not saying it doesn't happen, but it was a mess. And actually, I didn't see, it was sort of in the gaslamp district, and didn't really see regular human beings on their personal bikes, which I was like, ooh, that to me is kind of a canary in the coal mine. If there aren't just regular people on their own bikes, I don't know why we're going to expect people to get on. So we don't have that problem here because we have quite a bit of cycling. But I hope that we learn from those things. I would like to see something that's a regional system that ties in. To me, when I go to a city where there's, in the Pacific Northwest, some of the cities, or in San Diego, and I see 5 different companies, I have paralysis because I go, I don't know, which one? Am I going to comparison shop and download all these apps and see which works best and where they have them? I'm just like, forget it, I'll just walk or take the bus. So to me, narrowing it down to 1 or 2 vendors is important. I think having more than one, but having 2, be it for scooter or bike share, you get a little bit of the competition. And, we can do that. As far as using on-street space for parking these, that's something they're looking at in Isla Vista, kind of a bike corral type thing. We have precedent for bike corrals in our city. I would always love to see more, and this might be a solution for a place that we put them, because even though we say, well, we'd keep them in the furniture zone is kind of impacted as it is. I know there's been some bench removals, which is, of questionable, I don't love it. I don't love the removal of benches, but it's hard enough to find bike parking for your regular bike, and if this is going to be leaning up against every hitching post, that's already hard to get a bike on. What is that doing for our residents who do have their bikes? But the safety thing and accessibility is number 1 for me, and also making sure that we're not just giving up public good for people to make money off of. So, and as for the transit hubs, please do, moving forward, work with your transit district to talk about what might work best, talking about stop usage and good connections for that. That's it.
I'll go. That was very thorough. Thank you. I think I echo everything that she said, and just wanted to add a few other items for consideration. One, I already congratulated you on the very nice presentation, but the staff report was really thorough and comprehensive and informative as well. So nice job on that. A couple of things that I would maybe want to see thought out and discuss more as you're developing the ordinance. One is under the kind of vendor operations and responsibility section. Also thinking about the what happens to the bikes if a vendor leaves. I know that that's been a concern in other cities, that they just get left and they either end up in a landfill, or maybe parts of them are recycled, or they go to a for-profit company that resells them. So maybe thinking through whether there could be some partnerships with BC Centro or SB Bike, something along those lines for reuse. Under marketing, I think just kind of a good rule of thumb for any new mobility options offered in Santa Barbara City, it would be really nice to work with large area employers to see if the city can play a role facilitating some reduced rates for their employees to encourage alternatives to driving alone to and from work. I think in terms of the last, I would say, several mile connection, being mindful in particular about providing that linkage between the train station, MTD's bus stations, and work sites that aren't currently served by MTD or another transit provider, and really focusing your efforts there. And then to the extent that you do consider allowing electrically powered bicycles or scooters, I just encourage you to really work closely with Alilia Parento and her team within the city to look at the charging capacity needs and making sure that you're having early conversations with Southern California Edison and making sure that you can meet those capacity requirements depending on how many and what their usage is. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Who would like to go? Howard, go ahead.
I have one observation. That was a good presentation. I'm reminded that there's a pickup service, I believe, maybe somebody knows more about it, that picks up shopping carts, often from bus stops, and returns them to the owners. And, that seems to work. Who does it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. Great discussion. I'm so glad we're having it officially. I'm going to focus my comments on bike share and maybe mention something about scooter later. Appreciate all the public discussion. I definitely wanted to appreciate comments, Ms. Scott. Couldn't agree with you more about the need for racks. I think something that the city is going to have to do, or a vendor, or some type of combination, is look at improving and increasing bike rack capacity in order to complement this program for organization, so as not to compete with people who have personally owned bikes, and perhaps actually looking at, let's not jump to conclusions that a system would just be undocked bikes. There may be very appropriate spaces and roles for a docked area, especially for people who don't have the smartphones or credit cards or whatever, who can't just interact with the undocked bikes. Also, there's kind of a little bit of a lingo of sort of the undocked but locked, like locked to something, like some fixed thing. So they're not just like Dallas just accepted a bunch of bikes that just got dumped on there, right? And what Mr. Peters was referring to, what we saw at the Bike Coalition tour in Portland of the sort of geofencing. Geofencing can get kind of specific and also can be like per the bike. The bike isn't, you're not done until the bike is locked. And in the case of these bikes in Portland, locked with the physical kind of U-lock that engaged the bike. So there's different ways, and I think it really comes to actually what Ms. Kaufman was talking about demonstrated ability in the vendor. Santa Barbara is a jewel. We all love it dearly. and some like fly-by-night operation ain't coming here. I do want to also challenge the idea, though, I'm talking about bike share specifically. I would not jump to conclusions that we should charge bike share. I'm old school. I'm used to all this stuff being subsidized, right? Car share was subsidized. Bike share has been subsidized since Lyon and Paris and Copenhagen. And here's the thing. Don't charge them. Challenge them. What do we want from them? We want a lot. We have specifically equity issues. Well, some of that means you're running part of the program at a loss because it's a public good. And we're going to demand it. And you're going to comply. We're also going to actually probably set parameters, too, in terms of compatibility with existing use, like long-term bike rentals, right? There's some balance there. And there's some factor that actually makes it less economic for them to run. We're going to have strict standards for how things are geofenced, how things are balanced, the responsiveness to problems, and specifically, and perhaps most importantly, the responsiveness early on in the public planning process, that the vendor is actually a partner in going through public process to get this done, because they have to have buy-in and they have to be part of the hard work of actually prepping and planning a thing. You know, if the market is such that they can do everything that we want and they can pay us, great. But let's get what we want first. We want bikes in a well-maintained, well-managed, safe system, and I think that we can get it. The point of infrastructure that both Ms. Scott and Mr. Marsden made, couldn't agree more. Here's something I alluded to this earlier, but you know, State Street is going to be a key hub for these. I think we need a cycle track on State Street. I think that there's plenty of options right now where the business community wants creative thinking that could be done for a pilot period of a couple years or shorter and tested. And the cycle track wouldn't necessarily rule out vehicles on State Street, but it'd buy a lot of real estate and it would get scooters as well, but it would get inexperienced cyclists off of the sidewalk, which is critical to everybody. So I hope that that can be part of this process. And, you know, not just State Street, but that's a low-hanging fruit, I think, of infrastructure that we do need to address concurrently with bike share. Mr. Marsden, also to your point of UCSB, I'm sorry that I'm picking on you, but it's good. You're asking all the right. I can't talk back. That's, you know, I like to have the deck stacked in my favor. But you're bringing up the right points. And, you know, in terms of UCSB, something that actually Ms. Blackerby pointed out in a separate conversation, the way that they're structuring this is really wise. So for a student at UCSB, most of them have bikes. I used to work at the AS bike shop at UCSB, and I would see the worst bikes. These things are not safe, right? The chain falls off, and you have no brakes. Are there lights on these bikes? Oh, no. You know, so like we're talking about like the bottom of the barrel that are just kind of rolling around. And then for $60 a year, or for a 4-year student, you know, $240, which you can't go get a crappy bike from Kmart for that. And I'm not talking about the lights that are built in or the ongoing maintenance. So we're talking about bikes that are being maintained safely, that there's air in the tires, and that there's constantly running lights, which has been a thorn in the side of that community, just automatically, for less than it would have cost, you know, for that the freshman crop about to come to go buy, you know, a lower level bike. So I think actually, and that's part of that expectation that the university set. They're not getting money, but they built into the formula that this would be very cost effective for their students. And I think that was very wise. And that's kind of what I'm getting to. There's other benefits for the public good that we can extract. So let's do it, and let's do it right. Thank you.
I just have a brief comment, actually, myself. my comment addresses the parking issue. I mean, I know we're kind of beating it to death, but my husband is an avid bicycler, and according to Ed, I think he's probably going to live about 150 years, which is kind of cool. But he bikes all over town and has for 40 years in Santa Barbara. And he'll go where there's no bike racks, where there's no bike lanes. If he wants to get there, he's an avid cycler. And what troubles me is I can just one simple example, but it's multiplied by thousands. He likes to go to Vaughn's at La Cumbra. It's not going to be Vaughn's much longer, but it's a big market. And they've never been interested in putting in bike racks. And when I met with, our former person that had your position, he said, we talked to them, and there was no motivation for the owners of Vaughn's to put in any bike racks. So my husband, and that's just one store. So it's like, does the city have to pay for those? Does this bike company pay for that? You multiply that by all the stores in town, and that's a huge expense, even if they're going to put in some minimal places. So he locks his bike to posts wherever he can find them. But a market, my gosh, what a nice thing if all of our markets had a reasonable amount of bike racks so that people could, because he puts food in his backpack and brings it home because he enjoys biking for a small trip instead of dealing with the car. So, that's just one small example, but I see it as a really difficult issue because I can see where nobody wants to take responsibility for paying for the bike rack. So that's my comment. Thank you. Well, okay. I think thank you very much for your I want to thank you very much for your report on behalf of the committee, and welcome. I think we can be adjourned. Okay? Thank you very much. And bye, Dan.